Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're looking into something, well, pretty strange. Have you ever heard of Doveland, Wisconsin? A whole town that supposedly vanished back in the 90s.
It's a fascinating one. We're drawing mainly from a piece on historic mysteries that explores this enigma. And we've got some other bits on similar cases and how memory can play tricks on us.
Right, because that's the core issue, isn't it? You have people saying, I remember Doveland, I went there.
Vivid memories, even souvenirs, some claim.
But then, officially, poof. No town named Doveland, Wisconsin seems to have ever existed on any record, anywhere.
It's that clash. Personal memory versus official silence. How does that happen?
Exactly. So that's our mission for this deep dive. Figure out what's going on. Did a town just disappear, or is there another explanation?
Let's sift through it.
Okay, let's start with that lack of evidence. The article really stresses this point.
It does. It's not just, hard to find. It's a complete blank. State archives, census data, property deeds.
The kind of paper trail every town leaves, big or small.
Even down to quirky local history stuff, like the article mentions. Usually something sticks. For Doveland, zilch.
You'd expect something. An old map with a dot, a mention in a forgotten county ledger.
But there's nothing. It's like it was surgically removed from history, if it was ever there.
Which makes those personal accounts so jarring. People swearing they remember it, new folks who live there.
Holding on to memories that feel completely real? How can a collective memory exist for a place the records say never was?
Okay, so if it did exist and then vanished, how? The article lays out, 6 main theories?
Yep, 6 possibilities people have thrown out there. First up, earthquake. The idea being a massive tremor, opened a sinkhole, and boom, town gone.
Then there's the idea of damming. Building a dam, creating a lake, and flooding the town.
Third, something more sinister. A military science experiment gone horribly wrong.
Okay.
Fourth, maybe it was a temporary military town built for a purpose and then just abandoned when that purpose ended.
Like a secret base or something?
Sort of, yeah. Fifth is economic collapse. Everyone just packs up and leaves, creating a ghost town.
And the last one?
Let's call it the least likely. The town somehow turned invisible. Not aliens, the article notes, just invisible.
Right, okay. Let's maybe take these apart a bit, starting with the earthquake sinkhole idea.
Well, the article digs into Wisconsin's geology. It's just not earthquake country, not in a major way.
They had that small one, right? Clintonville 2012. Felt like a truck hitting the house, apparently.
Exactly. Minor stuff. Nothing remotely powerful enough to swallow a whole town. And a sinkhole that size.
You'd notice. There'd be geological surveys, reports, something. You can't hide that kind of event.
Precisely. The evidence simply isn't there. Wisconsin's pretty stable ground, geologically speaking.
Okay, so earthquakes seems unlikely. What about damming and flooding? That happens, right? Towns get submerged for reservoirs.
It definitely happens. Wisconsin has examples. But here's the key difference the article points out. Submerged towns leave traces.
Like underwater ruins, debris.
Exactly. Sonar picks things up. And crucially, there are always historical records of the town before it was flooded. Maps, deeds, census data saying this place existed here.
And for Doveland?
Again, nothing. No underwater evidence reported and absolutely no prior records. It breaks the pattern.
Okay, moving into the more dramatic theories. Military experiment gone wrong.
This one sounds like a movie plot, but the article brings up Chernobyl as a reality check.
Ah, right. Even a catastrophe that huge, meant to be covered up initially.
Leaves undeniable traces. Physical wreckage, massive environmental contamination, radiation signatures that last for decades, centuries even.
So if a military test wiped out Doveland...
You'd expect something. Bomb fragments maybe, weird soil chemistry, elevated background radiation, something tangible.
And again, silence, no detected traces.
None reported anyway. Makes that theory hard to sustain without any physical evidence whatsoever.
What about it being a former military town that was just abandoned?
Okay, so the U.S. has plenty of abandoned military sites. The article mentions one, North Concord USF Station, as an example.
And what do those places look like now?
Decaying buildings, concrete foundations, old roads, fences. They don't just vanish, they crumble, but the footprint remains.
You can see where they were.
Right. And around the supposed location of Doveland, no such ruins. No crumbling infrastructure suggesting a large abandoned facility or town.
So unlikely it was just a forgotten base. Which brings us to economic collapse. The classic ghost town scenario.
We all know what ghost towns look like, right? Buildings still standing, even if they're falling apart, empty streets, maybe some old machinery rusting away.
You see the bones of the town.
Exactly. People leave, but the structures usually remain for a long time. Doveland is different because, according to the story, everything is gone. Not just the people, but the entire physical town.
Which isn't how economic collapse works. It leads to abandonment, not obliteration.
Correct. It doesn't match the typical ghost town pattern we see all over America.
And the last one, invisibility.
Yeah, the article pretty much dismisses that as pure fantasy, like you'd expect. Fun idea, but not based in reality.
Okay, so if all these dramatic disappearance theories have major holes, what's the alternative? What does the Historic Mysteries article lean towards?
It points towards a much more, well, psychological explanation. It suggests the whole Doveland story might actually be a hoax.
A hoax, like someone just made it up.
Possibly. The article notes something really interesting. Mentions of Doveland online seem to really only start popping up around 2015.
Well, that's quite recent. Not the 90s when it supposedly vanished.
Exactly. That relatively late start date for the story spreading online is a big clue. It suggests it wasn't some long-lost local legend, but maybe something newer.
So if it started as a hoax, how did people come to have these vivid memories of it? This is where it gets weird again.
This is where the article brings in the Mandela effect.
Ah, okay. Explain that for us. I've heard the term, but...
Sure. It's basically when a large number of people share the same specific false memory. The classic example is people remembering Nelson Mandela dying in prison in the 80s, even though he didn't.
Right, he died much later after being president.
Yeah, correct, but lots of people distinctly remember hearing about his death in prison.
Yeah.
It feels totally real to them, even though it's wrong. That's the Mandela effect, a shared, specific, false memory.
Okay, so how does that connect to a whole non-existent town like Doveland?
Well, think about how stories spread online. Someone posts a compelling, maybe slightly spooky story about a vanished town. Maybe they include a doctored photo or a fake old map.
Okay.
Other people see it. It resonates. Maybe it triggers a vague, unrelated memory they have, or maybe the power of suggestion just kicks in. They think, huh, Doveland. That sounds familiar.
And they might comment, yeah, I think I remember hearing about that.
Exactly. Or maybe they misremember a trip to a different small town in Wisconsin and conflate it with the Doveland story. Then someone else sees their comment, adding to the proof. It creates this echo chamber.
A feedback loop, reinforcing the false idea.
Precisely. Shared narratives, especially intriguing ones, can be really powerful. We humans are social creatures. We tend to trust shared experiences. If enough people seem to remember something, it starts to feel true, even if it isn't.
Wow. So the memories aren't necessarily malicious lies, but potentially genuine false memories created or reinforced by the story itself.
That's the idea. Our memories are reconstructive, not like video recordings. They can be influenced, edited, even created by suggestion, repetition, and social reinforcement.
Okay, but what about the souvenirs? People claim to have mugs or T-shirts.
Ah, yeah, the article addresses that too. And the explanation is pretty straightforward, actually.
Which is?
Online print-on-demand sites, places like Redbubble. You can go on there right now and probably find or even create merchandise for literally anything, including a fictional town like Doveland.
So someone hears the story, thinks it's cool, makes a Doveland Badgers T-shirt, and sells it online.
Exactly. Then someone buys it, maybe years later, and thinks, see, proof. But the merchandise isn't proof of the town. It's proof of the story's popularity. It's a consequence of the legend, not evidence for its reality.
That makes a lot of sense, actually. It ties things together neatly.
It does seem to be the most logical explanation given all the pieces. The lack of any real-world evidence, the problems with all the disappearance theories, the recent online emergence, and our understanding of how false memories and online culture work.
So if we have to draw a conclusion from this deep dive based on the source material...
A conclusion seems clear. Doveland, Wisconsin, almost certainly never existed as a real town.
It's a phantom place, a fiction.
A fiction that tapped into something, maybe our fascination with mysteries, vanishing places, or just the weirdness of memory, and took on a life of its own online, amplified by phenomena like the Mandela effect.
Okay, so wrapping up our deep dive into the Doveland enigma, we looked at the claims, the utter lack of official records, the various dramatic disappearance theories.
And found them wanting, really. Earthquake, flood, military mishap, ghost town, none quite fit the lack of facts.
Instead, the evidence points towards a more recent, internet-fueled legend, a possible hoax amplified by the fascinating and sometimes unreliable nature of human memory, the Mandela effect.
It really leaves you thinking, though, doesn't it?
How so?
Well, what does this whole Doveland thing tell you about memory itself? About belief? It shows how easily a collective story, a shared narrative, can spring up and feel incredibly real to people, even with zero factual basis.
Makes you question other things you think you remember collectively, maybe.
Exactly. It's a good reminder to maybe pause and think about the origins of some shared memories or widely held beliefs you encounter. Where did that story really start? It's fascinating how powerful a story can be, even one about a town that likely never was.